Hey there, lovely people! Welcome back to another Writing Tip Tuesday. I'm Sammy, and I'm a writer who likes to help other writers become better writers. This week, I want to talk to you about how critiquing other people's writing can give you the potential to become a better writer yourself. If you have spent any time here with me on this channel, you know that every Saturday I do a video where I do a story study on a book that I've read, where I talk about the things that I liked, the things that I thought could have made it better for me as a reader, and what writers can learn from that particular book. This is a practice that I have found really valuable, actually, of reading other people's work and learning something from it. And I do try very hard to share what I learned from those books with you and my thought processes behind some of the things that I think I learned from reading those books. But it's something that I've learned is very valuable in wanting to get better at writing as a craft. Writing is one of the main art forms, I think, that you can learn by interacting with other people's practice of the art, and you have to learn how to do it your own way. So if you have like a favorite author and you want to write like that author, it's never really going to work out as yourself writing it because you don't know how their brain works, you just know what's on the page. So being able to take what's on the page and turn it into something that you can internalize and then externalize into your own writing. Reading other people's writing helps you make more educated decisions when you are working on your own writing. So let's dig into that. How does that happen? How do you get better at writing from reading? People can and have learned storytelling exclusively by consuming stories from other people. It is so unique in the craft of storytelling that you can learn so much about it just by figuring out what in a story that you have heard, read, or been told makes you tick. While it is and can be very helpful to learn things like techniques, backgrounds, and stuff, you can absolutely learn writing entirely from reading. You do that by identifying the things that you find value in. And that could be positive value or negative value, which is what I do. I do both in my story studies. And the important part is identifying why you feel the things that you feel about the stories that you're reading. Why do I resonate with that particular thing? So for example, I really resonate with characters that have a lot of detail added to them. I resonate with characters that act differently between interactions with one character versus interactions with another character because that feels more genuine to me. That feels more genuine to me. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the thing that makes it feel better. A character that feels more genuine to me, a character that has multiple different facets about who they are as a person, is my favorite way of receiving storytelling. And I will say, in the past, a lot of my characters were very like 1 level, 2 level characters. And I felt good about them because in my head, I knew what their story was. I knew that there was more going on, but I didn't put it on the page. So by reading more, I've been able to identify that that was a weakness in my previous writing. It's something that I really enjoy consuming, but I had not yet put out. So then I take the time to be like, all right, what am I missing to get to that point of the characters that I have read that I've been really drawn to? And the same thing can go for the exact opposite. Let's go for the concept of insta-love. I don't like insta-love. I think it's like the worst trope out there. I hate it so much. That's my personal preference. I don't like it. So what do I see in stories that have insta-love that I don't like? I don't like that we don't see enough interactions between character A and character B before they say that they love each other. I don't like that they feel so strongly all of a sudden when we had no signs that they were going to feel anything at all. What does that mean for my writing? I need to make sure that if characters are gonna fall in love, there are signs leading up to it so that I avoid those things that I dislike in other stories because I have read them. And those are very base level things. You can learn a lot about pacing, about creating suspense, about teasers. You can learn about showing versus telling. You can see the moments where you're like, okay, this feels right. This feels like the right time to tell something. I know you're not showing it to me, but it feels right. And figuring out why. Why does that feel right? Why does that make you upset? Why does that draw you in more? Figuring out why you feel these things makes it possible for you to apply it to your own writing in the future. And being able to read more and treat that as a part of developing your craft gives you the potential to learn more about how widespread the craft of writing is. There is always the possibility that you're like, I don't like books that have multiple perspectives. I don't like it. I don't like it when I have to switch characters, but perhaps you haven't found a book that does this thing yet. with their multiple perspectives. And that thing is so effective to you as a reader that you're like, maybe I would like this more if more books did this. Maybe this would work in my book for me to use multiple perspectives. Maybe you discover that you absolutely never will write in multiple perspectives ever because you don't like it and you never will. That is something you'll only find by having a wide array of consumed content. There's also the chance that maybe you've accidentally somehow only ever consumed books written in past tense. Past tense is really common for people to write in. Maybe you've only consumed books written in past tense and third person. Maybe that's how you think every story should be written, but your story should be written in present tense. In present tense would work better for this particular story that you are telling for whatever reason. If you go out and you read books in present tense, you might find that that is something that will work better for your story. It all depends on what you are able to get out of it with those why questions. It's actually a common belief that you can learn more about storytelling from reading and consuming stories like movies, TV shows, video games, any kind of story you can consume that is enjoyable to you. You can learn more from that than you can from like books on writing technique. Just because it works for one writer doesn't mean it's universal, because writing is a very personal, individualized craft. Coming up with techniques and finding all of these riddles behind why a certain author writes the way that a certain author writes and trying to fit those into how you write may create more disconnect between you and your craft than it would if you just took in stories and consumed stories and was like, why do I like this story? What about this story draws me into it? What about my favorite book keeps bringing me back to read it over and over again? Figuring out those things is what we are talking about here. So I want to give you a couple of techniques that I use for learning more about writing from reading. The first thing is obvious. I've already brought it up, which is pay attention while you're reading to the things that draw you in or immediately pull you out. The things that are really, really good or really, really bad from your own personal perspective. It doesn't have to be something you go out and tell the internet like, oh, I really hated that they said this one sentence. It made me really uncomfortable. That sentence is my ick. You don't have to do that, but knowing that is something that can help you in the future. Just paying attention to those moments that you're like, this is really good. Why? And asking yourself why in those moments. Why is this really good? And taking the time to actually think about it and step away from the story for a moment to address the writing. While you're reading, pay attention to the differences between the book that you're currently reading and the previous book that you read, or the previous movie you experienced, or whatever the most recent story you consumed was, and look at the differences. So does this story have stronger characters? What are the weaknesses compared to this story? How is the world building? Do you feel like the characters are motivated? Do you feel like the world is driven by some unknown force? Compare the different major aspects of storytelling between multiple stories and see what things stand out above other things. What things show you a weakness in another story that you may not have caught while you were reading that story. Try to keep the books and the stories that you are consuming fresh and available to compare and contrast. It's not always possible. You're not always going to be able to compare the book that you're reading right now to a book that you read 3 months ago, and that's okay. But being able to think about what makes every book different from the previous book and stronger or weaker than the previous book is going to be something that's going to help you look at your own writing and compare it to other things you've consumed. It's also really helpful to keep track of books that are really good at things that you consider a weakness in your own writing. So that is along the lines of the category I use in my story study videos, which is what writers can learn. If you are not that great at developing strong characters, keeping track of books that you felt had really strong main characters, really strong relationships with the characters, and saying, okay, I don't feel like this character is strong enough. I'm gonna read a couple of chapters from the middle of this book that I've already read, and I'm gonna see what I notice of the characters that I don't notice in my characters. And you have that frame of reference to be like, okay, from this book to this story that I am currently writing, I'm not doing XYZ. So maybe I can incorporate Y by doing this based on the example from that book. And then you have a catalog of resources to be like, this book is good at this thing. This book has really strong dialogue. I'm not the best at writing dialogue, so I'm gonna read like, what about this makes their dialogue so strong? What about this made me think this book is really good at dialogue? How do I mimic that experience? How do I bring my characters to a point where their dialogue is as strong as these characters' dialogue? And you have that database of these are the books that are good at these things, and that can be done in so many different ways. You can mark them physically. If you have like a collection of physical books, you can create like a spreadsheet of some kind where you have titles, authors, and like what they are good for, and like notes that you've taken. A lot of this can correlate with my video on remembering what you read, so you can take a look at that. I'll link it in the description as well. Taking the time to read more books is regularly recommended by very talented writers. They read as part of their writing process. They read because it makes them stronger storytellers, makes them better writers. It lets them see what other people are doing that they can emulate, mimic, and make their own. So you should try it out too. I have a feeling it would be good for you. But that is all that I've got for you today. If you enjoyed this video or you learned something from it, please leave a like. It'll really help me out. Leave me a comment below of the best example of a book that does something that you are not great at. You don't have to tell me what it does that you're not great at. I mean, you can if you want to. I'm not against it, but just leave me some book titles and authors down below and we'll have a chat, see if I've read any of them. If you don't want to miss any of my uploads, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell next to it. I'm here every Tuesday and Saturday for Writing Tip Tuesdays and Story Study Saturdays. So I will be back here on Saturday dissecting another book to see what we can learn from it. I will see you guys then.